carpentry, and take the youth, train them. We have in New London many, many dilapidated buildings that these individuals could go in and rehab. And instead of having people sleeping on the streets, we can now get low-income housing for people. Would you be inclined to go in that direction?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a couple ways to do it. One is through the enhanced use of a public service requirement for graduation from the high school. So that in order to graduate, you have to do so many hours. Right now it's at 40 hours, but I'm not sure how well it's really enforced or how well it's utilized, and the 40 hours can be done anywhere. Whereas I think it'd be better to focus those students and say, do your 40 hours or 50 hours, but do them on this community rebuilding project. Do them on a Habitat for Humanity housing project.
Okay, but
so
I mean,
it's
not so much as like a punitive thing, you've got to do 40 hours. I mean, the kid that is now leaving high school, there's no job out there for him.
Right.
Take this kid and train him as a carpenter, as a plumber, mason, painting, and then use their talents in refurbishing these dilapidated, broken down buildings so that the kid now has a trade. He has a source of making money, and everybody benefits.
Right. No, I agree, but what I'm getting at is that if you just offer it to say, we have job training, people may not show up. But if you say, you have to do these hours, but as you do them, we're training you into something, and if you find an interest area in a particular trade, we will then hook you up with programs and outside agencies that can continue in that. You know, you worked on a project where you did planting and greening of a particular city neighborhood or square, and you liked it. Well, okay, here's an organization that does that. Why don't you come meet up with them? They could train you in this, and then you could get a job when you graduate. I think that's something that we need to encourage. So I think the public service requirement is a way to filter them.
But I'm not talking just about the kids that are going to school. I'm talking about those individuals that are out of the loop.
Yeah.
The kids that did this stabbing and beating people up, those are the kids I'm trying to reach. And they're after the fact of school. The schools already did the damage. These kids are just wandering out and getting in trouble.
Yep.
Scooping them up and pulling them into the fold, making them part of the community all over again.
I think that can be done through another program which I proposed, which is that it's very rare, and I think you would know this from your own background and life experience. It's rare that someone goes out and the very first crime they commit is a murder. It can happen,
absolutely, yeah,
but it's rare. More often than not, you get involved with some low-level stuff first, you start hanging around the back.
Stealing cars.
You're stealing something. So what I've proposed is the first time that someone gets involved with the system, whether it be acting out in school or bullying in school, whether it be they got picked up by the cops for something minor, rather than just process them through the usual broken criminal justice system that just spits them out and gives them whatever and they're anonymous, is do something like what we did in New York. When I was at NYU, I was a management consultant for the Department of Juvenile Justice in New York City. And this is why I was eventually hired by the City Council. What we did was we created what's called an intake processing model, so that when someone came into the system, we immediately created an assessment of that person right away. What are your interests? What do you do? Where are you from? What's your neighborhood? What's your religion? What's your ethnicity? So that we can determine, okay, you're from Jackson Heights and you're South American. Well, there's a South American community center in your neighborhood. And while that kid was there for 2 days at Spofford, or what they now call Bridges, a juvenile detention facility in the South Bronx, before they were released on the street, where they went right back to the gang or right back to the triggers that caused the problem, we had someone from that organization, that CBO, that community-based organization, come right in and meet with the kid, so that when the kid got released, they had somebody, a mentor, a program, an organization back in their community, in their interest group or interest area that they could go to. And recidivism dropped off, because if you have somewhere to go, you're better off. In New London, what people don't realize is that these programs already exist. They already exist. I've been for years at Strike Zone Gym, a boxing gym on Bank Street. On a Saturday morning, there could be 50 kids in there. But you'd never know it because it's not covered that often in the local media. Or you can go down the street to Kente Cultural Center on a Saturday morning. They've got a bunch of programs going on. You can go to churches. They have programs going on. So I think what we need is not really to create the programs. What we need is to identify the programs, identify the troubled students, and have a regular process by which within the schools, within the police, within the city, when these kids show up on the radar screen, the first time they show up on the radar screen,
nail them.
We get them right into these programs, because if they have a place to go, if they have support, if they have something that interests them, they will be off the street. And let me tell you from personal experience, as someone who's been in boxing gyms and kickboxing gyms for 12 years from New York, Providence, New London, the kids that go in there, that find that place, that refuge, at 7, 8, 9 years old, they come every day. And they are more likely to graduate high school, they are more likely to stay out of trouble, and they're more likely to not only get into a trade or go into the military. Exactly correct.
That's a big piece people don't understand.
Yeah.
If you reject a child, where do you think he goes?
Absolutely right. And we need to support these programs too, because one of the things that frustrates me is I remember we had a fight show at the Crocker House Ballroom a couple of years ago, and we had, I think, 11 New London kids, I might be wrong on the number, but it was a substantial number, who participated in amateur boxing. Now, if you've ever competed as an amateur boxer, that's the hardest sport there is. No offense to football, no offense to, it's a tough sport. And the kids that do that, they have to be in there every day. Now, the kids in New London High School football, right, do a tremendous amount of work. I would see them in Planet Fitness working out. They're out there on the field working out. They do a lot, too. But they have a game, every game they have is on the front page of our sports section, the front page of our region section, sometimes the front page of our paper. They're covered constantly. They're supported constantly. And they should be supported because they work hard. But these kids in the boxing gym, they're working just as hard, if not harder. We had that fight show at the Crocker House. It wasn't even covered. Yeah, there was a media blackout. So one of the things the mayor can do, now that we have this new mayor, is wherever the mayor goes, the mayor can bring the camera with him. And when this stuff is going on, I'm going to be there if I'm elected. And I'm going to make sure the media covers it. And I'm going to make sure I yell and scream as loud as I can so that people know these groups are out there. Because I think if we know the groups are out there, if we regularly connect them to government, we've got the people. We've got the organizations. We just need the leadership to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Excellent. Let me ask you another off-the-side question. What is your position on not legalizing marijuana but decriminalizing it?
Absolutely in favor of it. And I was very happy to see this morning the New London Day main editorial endorse it and endorse medicalization. I think it's a ridiculous prohibition. And the interesting thing is that conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican, anyone who has spent a substantial amount of time in the criminal justice system under the criminalization of small amounts of marijuana sits there day in and day out in the court watching so much time, effort, energy, money being wasted to ruin people's lives. Because you get caught at 19 with a joint. Now look, you've made a bad decision, and smoking marijuana isn't good for you, and you shouldn't do it. But neither is eating a Big Mac, neither is smoking a cigarette, neither is having a beer.
And none of it's really jail for it.
Good for you. But not only should you not go to jail for it, but even if you don't go to jail, the record of that conviction can ruin your entire life.
Absolutely.
Because a drug conviction under federal regulations can deny you access to student loans, can deny you access to small business loans. So, okay, you're the kid from New London, you just got caught with a joint. Well, guess what? Not only are you getting your couple months probation or your diversionary program or whatever else, you're never going to go to college now. Now, what I would ask people who are strong marijuana opponents is, it's fine to be a marijuana opponent, it's fine to favor it being a criminal infraction or something, but do you think it's an appropriate sentence that someone who gets caught with a small amount of marijuana can never go to college? Is that an appropriate punishment for that level of a crime? I don't think so. I think that criminalization is ruining too many lives. It's wasting too much money. We should just switch to decriminalization.
And the cost, what's
and
the
leave it at
cost of putting someone in jail for small quantity of marijuana?
It's very, very
It's
high.
ridiculous. It's high.
And decriminalization still keeps it illegal. So there is still a social prescription against it. There's still a social
And a
statement
fine.
that it's bad, but it's a fine.
And the
We
city
make
is
money.
making money.
We make money.
Exactly.
It's still illegal.
Without destroying lives.
But we're not destroying lives. We're still saying it's bad. But if you get caught with a small amount of it, you get a fine. Now, if you're a major trafficker, if you're some major
Different
heavy
ball
hitter,
game.
if you've got a gun in the car at the same time, okay, now you're still
New
in
game.
criminal territory. But that kid that's walking down the street that gets caught with a joint in their pocket, I just don't see
Putting
the
drug
point.
addicts in jail is a mistake. They don't belong in jail, they belong in treatment. They don't need to be ostracized from the community. They have to be reintroduced to accepting their community, and the community accepting them. Now, I've done quite a bit of time in Massachusetts, and when I first went to prison, well, let me start at the reform schools. I went to the Lyman School for Boys Reform School. I was 13 years old, breaking and entering, which was kids really playing around, but it came under the title of breaking and entering. In reform school, I learned how to take the antenna of a car and make a zip gun. I learned how to take a pack of cigarettes, take the silver paper, and steal a car. I learned that in reform school, all right? When I went from reform school into the state prison system, 35 to 40% of the people in state prison I knew from reform school.
Oh, yeah.
And in the state prison, I learned how to crack safes. I learned how to pick locks. I learned how to circumvent burglar alarms. And there was probably 10 hardcore drug addicts in the prison system. Today, 85% of the people doing time in Massachusetts, I can speak for Massachusetts, doing time in Massachusetts have some form of substance abuse issue related to their criminal behavior.
Absolutely.
And what it adds up to is, putting drug addicts in jail is a mistake. Martha Stewart is a good classic example. She never should have went to jail. She should have been given a $12 million fine. We put her in jail, spent over $34,000 a year keeping her there in a Holiday Inn kind of prison. She wrote a book. She came out more famous than she went in. The criminal justice system is insane. And these changes I understand and realize that you can't do as a mayor, but the people coming out of the state prisons are coming back to your community.
Absolutely, and to a higher degree. I mean, let's be honest. We're a city in New London, and we have a high percentage of people who are coming out of jail. We have a higher percentage of young people who get in trouble with the criminal justice system. So the spillover effects of the criminal justice system affect us disproportionately to other communities. So if you're going to be mayor of New London, while you cannot change the grand scheme of is incarceration the way to handle criminals, I mean, that's a debate that goes on nationwide and internationally even, but you have to be recognizing the fact of what happens to people in that system and what the problems with the system are, because when they come out, you now have the problem. We have the people on the street who are coming out of prison with these brand new skills, which is why many people refer to prison as, I went to college.
School of hard knocks.
Yeah, I went to college for 40 years. No, you didn't go to college, you went to prison, but what you learned
was negative.
And now you're on our streets. Now, that said, I think that anybody, like yourself, and like people I know, friends of mine, who've run into trouble with the law, should be given a chance, to reintegrate and be given some, hope that just because you had a problem in your past that you can get beyond it, but we should still be aware of what they're coming.
We know how to rehabilitate, but we don't have the wherewithal to do it. And I use this in a lot of my discussions or whatnot, that if there was a magic button, that if you pressed it, you would instantly rehabilitate all prisoners, reduce recidivism to zero. Would the Department of Correction press that button?